My name is Nelson Buten. I'm the Director of Community, Family, and Student Engagement for the Lawrence Public Schools. I want to thank everyone for being here. School committee members, school officials, parents, school staff and administrators. Um, si alguien necesita traducción, interpretación al español, puede por favor pasar al frente. Debió haberlo recibido, pero si no lo recibió, puede ir al frente, a la entrada, y va a recibir un equipo de interpretación, un headset, un auricular. Well, I'm going to keep it simple because I think we already starting late, right? Without further delay, I would like to present to you our Honorable Mayor Dan Rivera. Thank you.
Good evening. Buenas noches. Thanks for being here with us today, which is one of the very first conversations in a very long conversation. When you see the timeline, I think it'll make a little bit more sense to you. But I wanted to start by saying thank you to some of the elected officials that are here. Dr. Marianela Rivera, one of our school committee members, is with us. Pat Mariano, the vice chair of the school committee, is with us too. Giovanni Rodriguez, city councilor from this area, is with us. I believe that's everybody. We're also going to do another one of these on Saturday at the Lawrence High School auditorium, right? The lecture hall, I take it back, that lecture hall. You will not get lost. But Nelson, thank you so much for the work that he and his staff do to making sure that parent outreach is done in a great way. Has done, I think it's made a huge difference. We're here to talk about, giving you an update on the school facilities, and let's see if this works. If that plays in the background the whole time, I'm not sure we can be focused. But it'll be fun. So first and foremost, what we want to do at this update, and what we'll do on Saturday as well, is provide a picture of what the facilities are like. And this bullet point is kind of like I don't got to tell you what the facilities are like. You guys live it. If you work there, if your kids go there, you know that we have facilities that have needs. But I think what you'll find is that we did a good job of actually asking architects to come in and look at some of these places and get a sense of what's going on in that way. We jump right away to tell you that we have a way that we can pay for some of these new schools and new renovations with the help of the state, and so we'll go over some of that. We want you to leave with that in mind: the state of our schools, how we can pay for new schools, what schools qualify to be funded through the state, and then talk about what the next steps, including the role of a city side is in the next couple months and years. And so those are the things we hope that you take away from in this during this process. So today we'll start right off the bat with a snapshot of state and the state of the facilities in the district. Seth from the school department will go over, Seth Racine from the school department will come over and go over those with us. We'll review the improvements that actually have happened. We've done actually a ton of work in the schools since the receivership, and usually cannot use Chapter 70 dollars for that type of facilities work. And the superintendent, because of us being taken over by the state, we actually got a dispensation on that, and we actually did use Chapter 70 dollars to fix a lot of the aging structure so we can have kids in good classrooms. We'll outline the opportunity for new schools through the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and explain to you what the criteria is for that. Then we'll go to how we targeted the application and what schools meet the project's criteria, and provide a timeline for the process. I told this somebody outside, and I think the timeline is, you're going to be surprised. It's like you're going to have this great conversation about it, and you're just like, oh my God, this is such a long timeline. I was working for Mayor Patricia Dowling when we voted on building a new high school, and then 15 years later it was done. Of course, we're not trying to build a new high school. It's kind of a humongous feat, so that's the type of timeline we're dealing with when we're building, especially when we're getting this help from the state. And then we'll talk a little bit about why this is part of the city's capital improvement plan. So next up, we're going to have Seth Racine come up and talk a little bit about our current building facilities.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Seth Racine. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for the Lawrence Public Schools, and it's my pleasure to support the Mayor in this work about the facilities assessment and review. So the first part I wanted to sort of orient people to is, so this is a view of our city, and we've actually been fortunate through state funding to be able to build new school buildings in many of our neighborhoods throughout the city. And so here we have the city broken up into about 5 quadrants. And in these 5 sections, there's a generally sort of where kids go to school, and actually in each section, except for the north central part, we've had a new school building since 1990. In the northwest, the Gilmet Complex, which we're in now. In the southwest is the Weatherby, which was opened in 2003. It was a renovated building. They took part of the older building and renovated it. In the northeast section, we have the Partham Complex, which opened in 2002. And in the southeast, we have the South Lawrence East Complex, which opened in 1994. Also down here, which is not shown, is the new Lawrence High School Complex, which opened in 2007. But in the north central part of the city, there have been no new school buildings since the 1980s. So as a first start, we decided to do a facilities assessment review and also take a look at what's happening with our enrollment. Over the last 5 years, we've had a pretty substantial increase in enrollment in many parts of our city. And actually, we've been confirmed by an outside reviewer, confirmed that in the north central part of this section of the city, our K-8 enrollment will continue to grow over the next 10 years, as well as our overall high school enrollment. What they also, the outside review also said was, while we've had many buildings, as I highlighted before, some really wonderful new complexes, for example, the one we're in right now, we also have many buildings that are more than 90 years old. And years of deferred maintenance have caused pretty substantial problems. But to the credit of Chris Merlino, our facilities director, they made considerable repairs of our buildings over the last 4 years. But for older buildings, they could only be properly addressed through major renovations or through new buildings. Again, it was mentioned by the mayor, but Chris Merlino and his staff have made really substantial work using Chapter 70 funding. The school department is limited in using funding for major renovations, but we have been able to install new playgrounds, replace floors, install computer labs, painted walls, and many other smaller projects over the last 4 years, really investing millions of dollars back into our school buildings. So in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we're actually quite fortunate because there's an organization called the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And this is an organization that will provide substantial funding to school building projects. It was prioritized many years ago that the state wants to make sure that our students go to high quality facilities like the one we're actually in now. So what they do is, this is a state agency, and they will pay a portion of school buildings. And actually, in the situation of Lawrence, they will pay up to 80% for a project if they approve it. It's a really incredible opportunity that we can get state aid for new school buildings. Where does that money come from? For everything that you buy where there's state sales tax, 1% of that goes towards the MSBA to pay for new school buildings. And so the first step in the process is to submit an application. This doesn't commit the city to anything. It doesn't commit the MSBA, but you first have to get in line. And so just to be able to submit an application, that deadline for new school buildings is next week. And if we don't submit an application then, the next application process will be a year from now, next April 2017. So the MSBA does receive hundreds of applications every single year from communities looking for major renovations, additions, and new buildings to the 351 communities across Massachusetts. So they have to have some criteria. What's their criteria? They prioritize projects where there's a projected increase in student enrollment, where school buildings are experiencing overcrowding, the age and condition of the building is substandard. And they also look at the size of the building and the plot of land to make sure that it's a large plot of land, and also to ensure that there are large numbers of students served. So with this criteria, I actually want to turn it over to the mayor in terms of projects that we're going to be submitting applications for.
Everybody with me? Everybody with Seth? Everybody got it? We had architects come look at it, look at a bunch of schools, and there's a sheet of paper that I put on the web that we'll make sure that everybody, we didn't bring any today, but they're on the web, and if you need it, if you haven't seen it, I'll provide it for you. Kind of the things they did with the architects. And then as we were going along, we fixed some of the schools. We have this great opportunity to get up to 80% reimbursement on new schools, and we have a process that we have to go through, and we got to get in line. That means an application process. And when we were talking about this, we had this, if you look at this map, the cool thing we were finding out is it doesn't take a genius to figure out where the need is, right? This is the most dense section of the community, and that part of the community is where a lot of kids come from to go to school. But we haven't had a new building structure in the North Central. What's the year? Since 1987, when they did the Arlington complex. To the point where one of the applications we put in recently was to fix the HVAC at the Arlington. We also put in an application to fix the boilers at the North Common Education Complex, what I like to call the old high school. Those boilers are in such disrepair that we put an application to get it. And those we get 60% reimbursement, I think, up to 82 or so. So we're gonna try to fix those two things because we know that this is also the place where we have a lot of our small schools, the Leonard schools down here, the Tar Box, and the Lawler, the Leahy, and Olive. So with all that in mind, that's where we came to this. And this in mind, again, we have to make sure that the student enrollment is increasing, that there's significant overcrowding, the age and the condition of the building is significant, and the size of the building and the plot of land are big enough. So we've talked about doing an application to rehab and build new structures in and around the Oliver and Leahy schools because they meet these criteria. The lot of lands that are in and around there, if you've been there, you've seen that they're significant for that piece. Make sure I don't mess up. So what does the timeline look like? So we're going to try to do 2 new schools or rehab them like we did the Weatherby is basically the shell of an old school, but a new school inside, and you know, this process is going to take a long time to get to what's a new revised Oliver look like, a new revised Leahy look like. But you can see we're going to start having this discussion in 16, and you know, the first school that we walk in the door from won't be till 22. But the application, and we're going to front load the Oliver school, will be the first application, right? The first application. So what we're shooting for on the 8th is to put an application into the application for the Oliver school, and wait till the end of the beginning of next year to see if MSBA approves that application, and then we'll go through the design of a new school with the community in the following year, and then we go out to borrow. We get the votes on the city council at that point, and then we start doing the work in 2020. It does not reflect it here, but it is in the capital plan. and I forget what year it is, we'll do a new submission for the second school sometime in 18 or 19, so that by the time, it'll all start going consecutively. Is that the word? So we don't get behind. So how does it fit into the capital improvement plan? So we have by ordinance, we have to submit a capital improvement plan. That's basically how the city plans to fix, maintain its capital objects, buildings, roads, vehicles, and have a system for replacing and repairing them. And we have never really had one. We've had capital improvement projects where we borrow a lot of money and then there's a laundry list in it, and then we pay that back and we fix those things we're supposed to fix. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But what we submitted to the city council was a list of a 5-year plan on how we were going to go over and get to a lot of the priorities for each of the departments. And we didn't know, like what we're going to do for an application, but we knew we wanted to put new schools in. So you'll find in the capital improvement plan, you'll find that there are placeholders for schools, for 2 schools, and there's placeholders also for infrastructure fixing, to make sure that we're gonna have to do at least one roof project. We're gonna have to do at least one windows project. We're gonna have to do at least one boiler project in those 5 years. So we put those things in there. I think that's what those 3, right? And on top of that, we said, well, we're going to start a new school project in the beginning of the 5-year plan, and then someplace by the end of the 5-year plan, we're going to be building. But it's a 5-year plan. And in there, you're going to see that there's park improvements, fire engine replacements, police vehicle replacements. We're going to fix the library and doing some stuff with the airport. They're big ticket items that I have to make sure that we plan for and where we get the money for every year. And we were very successful in doing that with the help of UMass Boston, so that we can be in a place that it becomes just automatic. Every year we have to spend X amount of money on making sure that we replace our fire trucks, that we replace our police cars, that we replace our DPW vehicles, that the conditions of our ball fields don't ever get to the point where we have to do 22 of them in one whack. Which is what we did last year. We spent $710,000 just to fix ball fields. But every year we're going to spend some money in those places that are important, and that there's a consensus of. So on the list for the city council is to fix the air conditioning at the library. It's $410,000, something like that. Everybody who's ever been to the library in the summertime knows that there's a problem with air conditioning. So it's a community-wide understanding. We're going to fix it as part of the capital improvement plan. The other thing that I will say is that the only way we can do this is if we have enough money, if we have enough financial health to actually borrow the money. So we're going to make a decision after we pass the budget to say, hey, are our financial conditions enough to borrow this money? Because we're going to have to pay for it. If we borrow the money, we've got to pay for it. And so that's a decision we make with the city council, and the city council has to say, yes, go ahead and borrow the money. And that's going to be the case with the schools. They'll vote on the plan, and then if we decide we want to borrow that money, then they get to vote on the budget. They get to vote on borrowing the money. For the schools, they have to vote on the application, letting us apply for it, and then again they have to vote on the capital improvement plan, and then separately they'll have to vote on the borrowing. And this is done to make sure that we have the community input on that thing. So next steps. This next step for me. So the 8th, we have to submit the application, and the reason why we're compacting these conversations today and then Saturday is because the 8th is around the corner. But if we don't submit it on the 8th, and this can't be understated, we have to wait a whole year to get in line. That's just to get in line. So we want to be in line now so that we can have that process start, so we're not really looking at this at 2023 or 2024. It's really important for us to meet those deadlines. They were kind enough to let us, we missed the deadline for the boiler and the HVAC at the Arlington at and at the high school, the old high school, but they let us in. And they were said, just make sure to do that, and that's before the city council to vote on the 5th, and I think we're gonna be okay. But that whole concept of us getting in line is really important. We've made no decision on what the Oliver is gonna look like, but we know we wanna do something new and different to the Oliver in the same way we did to the Weatherby. And then we'd start visioning, and if anybody, this visioning process is like, hey, what do you think should be in there? Well, I think it should be this and this and that, and it's a conversation. It's not like one day you'll show up to a meeting and there'll be all the drawings already done and you don't have no say in it. There'll still be a community conversation. And I think that the superintendent and his team has shown that they do that very well. Having people be part of a conversation. You saw that when they did the turnaround plan. So tonight we'll have some questions and answers from folks in the audience. We'll make sure that that stuff gets recorded and posted on the website, so that all this information will be there for everyone. But once we submit the application, it'll be early next year before we know if we've been chosen. We were the first school to go into receivership, be a level 5 system. Holyoke is now a level 5 system. And they've been waiting for us to get our act together to put an application in for some new facilities. So I'm not saying that I'm not managing expectations, that we might not get chosen, but they've kind of been waiting for us so that they can choose us for something. So we have a high expectation that we will be chosen. If we don't get chosen, don't get mad at me. But we have an expectation that that's the case, because again, we were the first receivership in the Commonwealth, and I think the facilities reflect some of the problems we've had in the past. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. You have any questions? You can have basic questions. I can go back in slides too. Go ahead.
Before we start with questions, I just want to clarify one thing. 2 ways to ask questions. You can ask questions now, but then as you were coming in, there was a station by the door, and there are big pieces of ESO paper on the walls. There are post-its that you can write questions that you might have on the way out, or that you might not feel that you want to ask right now. You can write down your questions and stick them on the ESO pads, okay? And then those questions will be delivered to the mayor's office, and they will provide answers and post them within 2 weeks from now, and post them on the website. So if you have questions, I have the microphone. I'll bring the microphone to you, or you can come to the front and I'll just pass it to you.
And when you do, can you just tell us your name?
Okay, let's start over here. Oh, we have wow! I'm dying to hear that question.
Hi, my name's Eric Selak. What's the likelihood of City Council looking at the city's financial predicament to make a determination if they want to borrow the money, if they're elected and the application's accepted by the MSBA?
I think that that's a good question. The question is about what the likelihood is. I don't know. I try not to guess the actions of the City Council. I think we're going to make a good case for it. But the cool thing about the capital improvement plan is it is a list of things that we want to do, and we can do none of it, or we can do all of it, but we can also do some of it. So in the years, I wish I had put the capital improvement list up, but I didn't bring it. The design dollars are in year 2 of the CIP, I think, that we would have to go out to borrow. So they say yes, and right away we're going to borrow this in the second year. I believe it's in the second year. It might be in the third, but I think it's in the second year. So they're able to say, but there's all the other things in that second year too. And we can't afford all of it, but we'll definitely do the design plan. And so it'll be a piece of the whole capital improvement plan. But we might find ourselves flush, and we might do all of it.
Thank you.
I
think we have one question here that was before yours. Really quick, very important question.
You raise
Remember to say your name first, okay?
Okay. My name is Javon.
What's the question?
When I get big, I want to go to this school.
You want to go to this school? All right.
Thank you, J-Man.
Seth, can you take care of that? We can let somebody know.
He's only 4.
Oh, you'll be surprised.
Exactly.
Starting in May 1st, pre-K and K. So we can talk to you after.
I have no idea.
I can talk to you about it.
Hi, my name is Jackie Marmol, and this question is for the Oliver Partnership School. If the application gets approved for the Oliver Partnership, my main concern there is we don't have a backyard there. I mean, like a playground. Kids got to play in public parks, which I see it as a safety hazard. Will the school be remodeled, or is it going to be a brand new building in the same location? Will there be a private yard for the school, you know, a playground?
So that's a really good question. So the answer to that question is we will find out when we start visioning it. But what I would take away from that location where the Oliver is that we do have the city park on one side, and we have a city baseball field on the back side, and it is not uncommon in urban settings for where kids play to be in those spaces. That's not uncommon. In the Bronx and in New York and places like that when there's a lot of density, so I don't know the answer about what's a final going to look like, but I think when we start visioning it, you're going to see the amount of space that is around it that we actually own, and you put the private ways and all these things in there. There's a lot of space, and then you put the footprint up there, and then you think about going up floors as well. I think there's going to be a lot of space, and the kids have a comfortable place to learn. I know that doesn't answer your question right now, but if I answered your question right now, we would have to say, forget about the design work. We're going to have this conversation as a community. And if people want to, do something radical and do something, then we'll do that stuff. But I think that's a conversation for after we get picked.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else? We have another person here.
My name is Tim McCarron, and I am a teacher here at the Gilmet, a math teacher, and in charge of the National Honor Society. My question is more of an infrastructure one. As we've seen in some urban cities around the country, there's a water problem in schools. And so I'm sure that the water that's delivered to all the different schools, is being tested on a regular basis, especially some of the older facilities. I've worked at the Leonard, I've worked at the North Common Complex. So my question, Mr. Mayor, is that in the planning stages too, to make sure the ongoing water for the kids is pure?
Yeah, no, that's actually a good opportunity to talk about. We are in the middle of a huge water infrastructure repair replacement throughout the city. We have a brand new water treatment plant, and brand new in the sense of it's less than 15 years old, and that's pretty new. And so it's pumping great clean water. Then we have 100-year-old water infrastructure, so when it gets to the place, it's not as clean as when it started. So we're replacing a lot of those. I shouldn't say replacing. They have this cool technology where they line the old pipe, and so we're doing a lot of that. So if you hit a big pothole and you're upset at the condition of the streets, right, you're probably going over a street that's the water infrastructure is being fixed, right, and so that's piped into it. And again, what we should have in the building when it's done, it'll be a punch list, and we'll make sure that's on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Pat Mariano. Mr. Mayor, you indicated that the school building authority, we have to stand in line. Typically, do you know how many districts are in that line usually? Even though they're looking favorably on us to put in an application, what is that?
Over 100.
Over 100?
Over 100, yeah.
Every year?
Yeah.
You think?
And so in some years they have, I remember this because we were talking to them about this. Some years they have a lot of school systems that need 80%, and then sometimes they have a lot of school systems that need 20% or 40%. And so that's how really they get a lot of it done. So it's over 100. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next
Any other
person?
questions? Oh,
Okay, we have one more here. Oh,
Martha.
I love this idea. I love the all over school, so I love it. My question is, how many students go to each school, and what is the projected amount of students going to be able to be in school after the renovation's done? So how many seats are we growing?
Seth?
So in both situations for the Oliver and the Leahy, over 500 students attend both of the schools. To your question about, so what would, and the projected enrollment in the overall neighborhood will grow between, I'd say around 5% over the next 10 years. In terms of what would then the capacity be of the building, that would be part of this whole conversation that the mayor talked about, where there would be sort of trade-off conversations about here's the type of designs, here's how many students it could fit, here are the amenities that could serve, and if we do X, Y, and Z, could serve more students, could serve less. So during that feasibility process, working with the community in creating the design, that's when we'll find out much more details about size, how many students could be served, and what types of parts of facility would be available.
thank you. One more question. I have one here.
As he's getting to the next question, the other thing about that is, when you think about all the schools we have, you think about this checklist, you can, a lot of them just fall off because they just don't meet these criteria, and they just won't pay for them. You know, we won't get the type of support we need to get them done. And so when we have that discussion about what it's going to look like, how many people are going to be in it, I think that we're gonna, I think about the Oliver is 3 floors, 2.5, right? And so, what a 4th floor might be, or a 5th floor. It's in a situation where it would be the crown jewel of the park when it's done, and what a site that would be. So then the numbers, I don't know how many kids at the old high school total. Yeah, so there's 3 schools, 1,000 students at the old high school. So you can imagine. You have one more question here? Sure.
Hello, my name is Chris Berlin Gonzalez, and I go to the Leahy, and my brother, he goes to the Up Academy Leonard, and they don't have a cafeteria, so like, are they gonna like put a cafeteria there or something?
At the Leahy, again, when we talk about what it's going to look like at the end, I'm sure that a cafeteria will be part of that.
Okay.
The Leonard, I think they're going to have to be in the conditions that they continue to be in today.
Thank you.
I went to the Leonard too. But it wasn't Up Academy, as you could tell.
I believe, okay, right here. And I believe there is another one in the front.
Hello. I have 2 kids. Rosalind's 1, and I have Raul, who actually come to this school. And I have a question for the 2 schools that you had in mind of kind of renovating. You were talking about borrowing money, so are we going to be left to fit the bill, or how would that work?
Yeah, so the way it works is that we borrow the whole cost, and every year we have to pay the interest and capital every year. The state reimburses us at 80% of the total cost. So let's say the school is going to cost us $44 million. Let's say it's $44 million. So the city will have to pay, will go out and borrow $44 million. And every year we go to make a payment on that $44 million. The city will have to come up with 20%, and the state will come up with 80%. And that's how we currently have it with the, we have, the high school is on that formula. And we're paying that off the way now.
Just to add a little bit, so if you think about it, so for every dollar you spend, 80% will be covered by the state. The other benefit, though, is the nice thing with borrowing that the mayor has mentioned is that it spreads the cost over like 30 years. Because you're going to be using this building for a long period of time. So not only you get to only pay 20% of it, but then take that 20% and spread it out over 30 years. So now it's much more reasonable because we're going to be using the building for decades. So it's through once we figure out what the total cost is going to be, That will be then the opportunity, when you see the cost, we'll have the details about, so here's how much it's going to cost every year over 30 years for the city council to decide if the cost is worth it.
That poor girl has no cafeteria, but my kids come to this school, and this school is, pretty brand new for them, so.
Yeah, and so the other thing too is that's why the capital improvement plan is important, because every year there'll be another 5-year plan, and it just moves it over and over, and we can say, this is all the borrowing we have. Some of the borrowing we did for when we did those early schools, Gilmet, this school, the Partham and the Weatherby, some of that debt's already coming off, and so now we have some money that we can borrow. And in general, like in our personal finances, it's not always great to have high debt. In a business and in a municipality, it's actually looked frowned upon to not have debt, because you really should be spending money on stuff. And so the people that borrow from us say, wait a minute, you're not borrowing any money to fix your schools or your parks. Something's wrong. And so they expect us to have a level of debt. And so now that some of these things are going off, it allows us to afford some of this other stuff that we can do. But what they don't want is this, the way we've been doing it in the past, which was nothing, 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 and then boom, an $80 million borrow, and then nothing, 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 and then boom, and then that's not healthy. Cool.
Okay. We have one more question here. I have to say that I love it when I hear kids wanting to ask questions, because public speaking is probably one of the most difficult things to do, right? So let's have one more person here, and then we're going to go to the front, because I feel the gentleman in the front has a question.
My name is Rosalind, and I have a question. Who made all the schools in the universe?
All the schools in the universe?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Can I get back to you on that? A lot of hard work in play, yeah, no doubt, right?
Javon, I think we need to give the opportunity to another person.
Any questions about, the process? Good questions about the money. This is the very first conversation in a very long process. It's a long time, but it's the stuff that you have to start doing now. So I just want to make sure that there'll be time to ask more questions, I should say.
So I actually have a question. Having a very large stake in the Oliver Partnership. My name is Nancy Selak. I work at the Oliver Partnership, but even a bigger stake, I'm a community member in the city. This is a long time, but it's really not a long time. But city government changes.
Yeah.
Once the application is submitted and approved, and the design becomes a reality, and city government potentially could change in this time, are the plans going to change, or is there a potential that once the plans are created that they could change if city government changes?
We're going to be committed to the state.
I know we are.
We can't. No, they take it back. I should say it differently.
Today.
I take it differently. Once the city makes the commitment, we're committed. So it doesn't matter who's mayor, who's on the city council. They're committed to do the borrowing, right? So once we borrow for design, it would be super foolish not to borrow for the construction, especially since we're going to get 80% back. So we're going to be committed. The application doesn't commit us, but once we get to the point where we have to pay dollars for design, we're going to be committed. And I say we, considering that in 2022, 2020, who knows who's going to be in charge.
And I just have part 2 of a question. In looking at the maps that were displayed, our part of the city is highly congested. We look like we service the largest part of the city. Is redistricting part of this plan as well, to maybe share the wealth of our growing population in the north central area? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thanks for the question. So it is not part of this plan in terms of redistricting, but as you're well aware, we always want to make sure that we're able to balance enrollment numbers across different schools, and we have a number of both elementary schools and middle schools in the north central part of the city to try to balance to make sure that we have appropriate levels of students in every school. But as part of this, there's no intention at all about redistricting due to the application.
And for those who are not familiar with the jargon, you mean redistricting is moving students from current location to other locations?
I'm talking about like redistricting, like for instance,
8th graders and 6th graders.
city comes to the
Oh, okay.
to our local school, whereas the North Street goes to Franklin School. So the Northeast District services West Street to the Blackneck schools and the South Central area.
Gotcha, yeah. So no, there's no. But we're always going to be smart on how we do those things.
Any more questions?
Select.
Is there any potential to, and I know I like the idea of a community vision for this, but the reality, if you have an overwhelming community input that says we really want to take this state of a schoolyard, and I think probably more of the concern is having the ability to facilitate the growing number of students coming in. So at what point does the city kind of balance what that community input is to make the decision, okay, we need to have something that's going to be a solid plan that will be approved and it will be feasible for whatever city council it is to approve that going ahead forward. Because we're talking 5-year plans for community improvements, but there's got to be a strategic level to make sure that the plans that you vote on is something that's going to be feasible to go ahead forward.
Well, that's part of the reason why the mayor's job is really great, because you get to say, these are all the needs, and you create a list, and then that list is based on what your the input you get from the community, and you get to prioritize it. The council gets to move some of that stuff around, and so that conversation will happen. One of the things that I went into this conversation saying was, I don't want to take a park. And I don't want to take a playground, because we did that for this building. We did it for the Parkland. And when you're 6.7 square miles, and then you take out the river and the roads and the parks, you get pretty small. And so if you encroach, and the big question is going to be the O'Neill, just gonna put it out there. What do we do, and how does that play into it? My thing is, I just don't think we can afford to lose parks. But I think that it's a community conversation, so I might be outvoted. You know what I'm saying? Like, so.
That's my concern. I personally don't think that taking the parks is a necessity. I mean, like you said, in major urban areas, it's not uncommon to walk the 65 feet across Stable Street and have the kids in the car.
Yeah. And we could always do a better job making sure that street's safer, and we should do that today.
And that's my concern. You might have, I think Ms. Marmol had voiced her concern that having an internal type of playground for the kids would be a good idea, but I think having 4 floors or 5 floors to facilitate more students in a better learning environment and a safe building should be more of a priority. But that's my question and concern, having that community input. If you are out there, at what point does the city say, well?
Yeah, we'll have to put the stake in the ground at some point, and that's the bad part, right? Because you get to upset a bunch of people. But I think that the process will be, we have to do that the process because the state and the state will expect it. But usually positive things will come out of those conversations, not more problems. Especially since we'll know what the trouble spots are going to be when we go into it. Anybody else? We'll be around, and we'll put this on the web so people can see it. And then Saturday, if you want to come back and think about another question, I'm learning about this now. So in Saturdays, there'll be a sheet with my contact information and my email. So if you do have a question, you can email me at mayorrivera@cityoflawrence.com, and we'll try the best to answer it. This is hard and important. And when it's hard and important, it means there's going to be a lot of back and forth, and it's going to test us as a community. But at the end, the hard and important stuff are the things that are really good for our kids. So at some point in 2022, we'll be all cutting a ribbon to a really nice high school. A really nice grade school. Thank you so much for coming.